Welcome to the Invested Teacher Podcast with Kyle Pierce, Matt Bigley, and John Orr.
Get ready to be taught as we share our successes and failures encountered during our real-life lessons, learning how to build generational wealth from the ground up.
Welcome, invested students, to another episode of the Invested Teacher Podcast.
Well, my friends, we are back here today, and the topic of the day, it sort of stems from a conversation we were having as a group, and we were just chatting about income. We were talking about some conversations we've had with some we'll say nameless invested student clients around what they're earning and how they're feeling. It seems that everyone's feeling the pinch, and actually, it sort of made us think back and kind of go like what's happening out there. We know inflation's happening. I'm sure everybody's aware of this, keenly aware that things are changing. COVID and all the money printing has led to prices to rise, and we're dealing with all of this, uncertainty right now. But ultimately, it really had us thinking about, and kind of digging into like, what is enough to actually live on?
Right. Yeah. And I think, when we were, I think Matt, you had found an article that, that kind of directed you to kind of think about this and do some research, but it got us thinking too, is $100,000, is that enough money to, make a comfortable life? Is that what, the ideal has been, like for me, I think when you heard that number, you're like, that will be more than enough. That's a great number. That's a great number. And I think, and I often, for some reason, and I can't explain it, maybe it's one of those like anchoring moments in your life. I don't know. It's like, it's probably similar to like how you hear a song and you remember like that time of the, moment. For some reason, when I hear a dollar amount for a salary, I'm often brought back to when I was like an early teenager, like back to 1993.
Whoa.
Think back when I heard my dad
Jam's second album was just released, and
yeah. I think I was in grade 8 or 9, and it was like so. I heard my dad, who is a teacher, state his salary, and he said $60,000. Like he had made $60,000, which I think was the going top tier rate of a teacher back in 93, and for some reason, that is pegged. It has pegged me to say that's the right amount of money. It's almost like my mind has
I'll be okay.
wiped away that inflation exists, and it carries forward, because when I made $60,000 when I was a teacher, I was like, man, that's awesome. But I made it like pretty much quickly, within the first few years of teaching and getting to the top tier on the category scale, not say the yearly scale, like your experience scale, but once you got to category 4 on your scale, it was like there was close to $60,000 pretty quickly, and I remember thinking that was it. I made it. I've got the right number, and then every year after that, it went higher and higher and higher, and I still think $60K is the right number. And actually, in reality, if I had worked until my retirement date, which would have been 2036, right? It's burned in my mind. 2036, if I had taken my pension, it would be $60K. So like for some reason, it's still there pegged that's the right number to live a life of comfort, of being able to provide for your family. But guys, like when I finished teaching, 100K was where we were. And I still think that sounds like so much money, but I don't know. Like, we're going to do some digging today. I was like, I don't think it's the right amount of money anymore.
Yeah, 100K sounds like, it was the holy grail. It's like you made it, the proverbial six-figure salary.
Right, exactly. Maybe that's it.
Teachers, police officers, nurses, like, a lot of people in public service are making this much money. And what's so crazy is, this article from the Globe was saying that roughly 10% of Canadians make 6 figures or above. So, this kind of sounds insane to say, is $100,000 enough? Because the vast overwhelming majority of Canadians aren't making $100,000 or more.
Right.
And so, what is happening there? But I think our audience is largely made up of people who may fit this profile. And so I think this is really about exploring the perception versus the reality of this $100,000 holy grail. And as we unpack this, And as we think about, both our current and future financial goals, it's about wondering, is this enough? And it's not going to be all bad news, even though the picture I think we're going to paint here is a pretty bleak one for those. We live in Windsor, Essex, which is incredibly affordable compared to many parts of the country. So we're going to paint, I think, a bleak picture based on these numbers, but there's hope. And the three of us coming from this world of education and teaching and making this six-figure salary and leaving it behind for something that I think is so much better, both financially as well as with our lifestyles. So my first wonder to you guys, being our human calculators, our math crunchers, is, if we have $100,000 gross salary, what does it actually look like? What's our take home? What's our net from that for, say, a typical, let's take a teacher, or again, any of these other professions that are going to have similar benefits, defined benefit pension plans, those types of things. What does it look like?
We're going to dig into that, but before we do, like, something that popped into my mind, and this was unplanned. This was completely unplanned.
What?
But as soon as
Off
you
script?
named off script, but Matt, you had said something about, teachers and police officers and and right away, what popped into my mind, I don't know if you guys were thinking it too, but if you know, and you are from Ontario, this thing called the Sunshine List.
Ooh,
and the
yes,
Sunshine
true.
List here in Ontario, I don't know if it happens in other provinces, but I know here in Ontario they do. And basically, the Sunshine List is this list that is published every year to show any public sector workers who earn over $100,000. And the year that I went onto the Sunshine List, like, someone said, like, Kyle, you're on the Sunshine List. I was like, what does that even mean? I had no idea. But more importantly, like, what popped into my mind was, I'm going back and I'm thinking about John and your $60,000, right? You're saying, like, that was your number. You said 1993 for that number.
That's right.
Because we're human calculators, and really, Microsoft Excel is kind of my biggest help in that endeavor.
You're a
so
geek.
It's not
You're
just
a geek
happening.
on that.
I'm totally geeky for sure. I totally am. But so what we did was, we actually looked at the data, and basically over any 20-year period, if you actually think about inflation, it's typically around 4%. Now, of course, it can go way high. Like in the 80s, went way high for a while. It's way high right now. It's always reported lower than the reality too, which is something that's hard to, really navigate, right? Because they get to decide what the basket of goods is, and they take things in and put things out. But anyway, that 4% is the average over, like, pretty much all 20-year periods. Okay, that's kind of a good number, even though the government and the Fed in the US and the Bank of Canada are trying to aim for this, like, 2% number, right? Like, they actually want the money supply to inflate. They do want a little bit of that, because that means they get more money, right? Like, think about that. You get pushed into higher tax brackets, right? So, like, the tax brackets didn't go down as your salary went up, right? Like, John, like, you hit that 60,000 fast, and the government was like, exactly as I planned, right? Like, John, you get to pay me more money now. Congratulations. Oh, and by the way, everything costs more too. So when I look back and I was like, when did the Sunshine List even begin? And the Sunshine List began in 1996. So what, Pearl Jam's third or fourth album or something like that? So John, you were talking 93 and 65,000. And now we're in this place where the Sunshine List, what hasn't changed on the Sunshine List is this $100,000 benchmark. So think about that for a second. Back then, 60,000 actually was, and you said the max salary for teachers, I think in 93 was around 65,000 in Ontario. $65,000. That was a big gap between this Sunshine List, and now it's like all teachers, once they hit the top of the grid, are on the Sunshine List, right? And a lot of people are like, teachers are paid too much, or police officers are paid too much. But in reality, if we were to take that number from 93, like you said, we used 65,000 because that was the max teacher salary in Ontario. And you actually used 4% as inflation on average each year. By the time we hit, I just turned 40. John, you're what, 42?
43.
43. So John's 43. You would need, in order to replace that $65,000 salary, like that was the number you had in mind, and you're like, that's a big
My
number.
dad's salary. That was my dad's salary.
Yeah, it's like amazing. Well, in today's dollars, assuming 4% inflation every year, by the time you are 43, which is now, you'd need $210,000 to have the same buying power, the same purchasing power. Now, if you want to go, some people are like, well, I 4%, that's too high, whatever. Let's put it down to 2% for a second. It's still 117,000. And I think 2% is way conservative in terms of like what inflation actually looks like.
So in context, like if I think about my 1993 self, when I viewed my dad's salary at $60K and I compare it to my salary when I finished teaching, my dad would have felt so much richer than I felt. Basically, if it was a 4%, it should be double. It's like he was like, to him, it was feel like if he's living in today's time, he felt like he'd made 210,000 worth of buying power versus my 100,000 worth of buying power. That's crazy.
Yeah, and I want to go even further. Like I'm like doing this on the fly as we're talking in my magical spreadsheet here. And I just want you to think about this for a second. Think from like the fact that back in 96, okay, so you said 93, but 1996 is when the Sunshine List came out, and it was to expose public sector workers.
Public sector
so you could see like any name that was earning more than 100,000. That was by, I think it was the Mike Harris government.
Public list.
If inflation goes at 4%, John, right now, that list, if it actually inflated, if the number inflated like your salary did, it would be 324,000.
Right.
So like when you think about that and the differences, right? It's almost like the Sunshine List is silly now. And then if we look at it at 2%, it's 181,000. So we're talking like maybe some superintendents, not all superintendents, or the directors of certain districts, or, maybe, I don't know what police chiefs and so forth earn. But, when you really think about that, the fact that the Sunshine List kept, they were like, no, 100,000, they kept it static for the last, call it, 30 years. And yet inflation has grown salaries. Our salaries have not kept up with inflation, but yet the Sunshine number, that benchmark, has not grown either. I mean, ultimately, you're going to have, essentially, if they don't change something, pretty soon you're going to have fast food employees that are going to be on the Sunshine List, right? But I guess they're not public sector, so who knows?
So it's actually, it's hard to think about, thinking that my dad had so much more buying power than I have. So thinking about how that has, in context of, is $100,000 the right amount of money to live that comfortable life? Because I still think that many people think so. Like you said, Kyle, the 6 figures, and now we've just got one piece of data that says, if $100,000 on the Sunshine List in 96 compared to now is like 310, it's like, now it's almost like, is 310 the right amount of money, like to live that super comfy life to $100,000 back then? So, I think there's a case here, but I mean, we still, let's dig into some of the numbers. Like Matt brought up the idea of like thinking about, let's look at $100,000 as if we were making that now, which teachers at the top end of their salary are. And let's now compare it to what some of the average costs are and see like where does our budget fit in with, let's say we make $100,000. That probably means what we're going to take home between $65,000 to $70,000 after tax, after pension contributions, after all of that, maybe $60K, around that, after you kind of like take off all the deductions and planning for, because I had pension, pulled off right from my salary. So I remember thinking $60K was like my take home when I did some number crunching right there. And that's the money you have to spend on all the things, right? All the things. So it's like, okay, if that's the number, then do we have enough to kind of like not only, pay for your family? Because $100,000 actually, like you guys said, is the 90th percentile. But when you look at StatsCan, it's the 90th percentile if you're You know, if you're close, if you're between 35 and 44, so it's like by age, and then you're like peak your income kind of peaks at between 45 and 55. 90th percentile in Canada at 45 to 55 is like 130K. But I mean, like you're still in good shape there. So it's kind of like, what are we spending on for our families? What do we, like, if I got a car payment, if we got mortgages to, like, I want to know, I want to understand that is 100K enough to have all of that and be able to like save for retirement, but also like a good retirement. Like, or maybe like there's a ton of people like, you know, Kyle, like we get calls all the time reaching out to us about investing and real estate investing and JV partnerships. And a lot of these folks are wondering, it's like, can I retire early? You know, can I retire early? I make 100K a year. Do I have enough to retire early? So it's almost like, is 100K enough to like pay for everything and be able to like plan for early retirement?
Yeah, it's definitely becoming more and more of a challenge, as you can imagine, right? And, you know, we dug up all kinds of numbers here. And of course, that, you know, makes my heart sing. However, it also makes it a little sad when you see, like, John, after you consider, let's say, like taxes on 100K, and then say it's a pension contribution, or let's say you're paying around like 10, 12% of your, you know, of your pay to put into your own pension, right? Like let's assume that that's happening. You're left with maybe 60,000, you know, low 60s after all of that, right? So your like marginal tax rate is like 37,000. Like here's the crazy part. So the average tax rate for someone who earns 100,000 in Ontario, and it's similar in other provinces, but not exact, but the average tax rate ends up being around 22.5%. Doesn't sound bad, but the marginal tax rate is 37.91%. So call it 38%. And that means that even if you want to go out and earn more money, if you do it and it's not, say, protected in some way, say a corporation or some sort of other, you know, structure, you're losing essentially 40% of every extra dollar you earn to the government. So, you know, some people who earn 100,000 and let's say they go pick up, you know, a shift somewhere at, you know, they want to be a waiter, or they want to, you know, go bartender, they want to do anything, assuming they're claiming as they're supposed to, quote unquote, claiming those tips, they're giving, you know, 40 cents of every dollar to the government, right? So it's like, as you get to that level, it's like every extra dollar you earn is like you're giving more of it away, which is also not super exciting. On the other end, when we look at the cost of everything, so if you think you got 60K left to spend, that's like $5,000 per month. And then we start to look at some of these average payments here. Like Matt, you had pulled some of these numbers here. Like what were some of these averages that you were seeing? You know, I remember like the car payment one kind of blew my mind because I don't have a car payment right now and I hate buying cars personally, but the average you said kind of blew my mind. Take us through some of these numbers.
According to the article, $813 is the average car payment. That's a 7-year loan as well. $813. I know we bought a van. This would have been in 2020, and ours is a little, you know, $550 for our Chrysler Pacifica. I've got another car that I was able to buy through my business, and this has been a point in a number of our episodes. You know, when we make salaried income, there's some benefits, but there's also some challenges, and we've alluded to those in some other episodes about you know why owning a business is preferential. So, you know, in my case, our family car is owned personally. My business vehicle is owned through the business, so that's a benefit of owning the business. So $813 per month of that $5,000. Call it $600 a month if you drive a more modest vehicle.
And that means that half of people are paying more than that, right? Like half are paying under that, and half are paying more than that, right? Or no,
that would be the median. That's the median.
Oh, right.
It's been a while since I taught that.
Oh my gosh, the math.
I know. Jeez, I'm like so rusty.
it pegged groceries at about $350 per person. John was saying for his family of four, he's about $1,200 a month. So call it $400 a person, for groceries. That doesn't count, I don't think, for restaurant meals, for
Yeah.
your morning coffee run. That is just straight groceries. So call that
That's not eating
per
out.
person
Yeah.
$400 a month, $1,200 a month on groceries. Let's talk maybe mortgage payments. We've got a mortgage broker with us here, John. So the average house price in Windsor, Essex, and again, keep in mind, we are one of the most affordable places in the country, where you'd want to live. I'm sure there's spots that might be cheaper, but we were $530,000 was the cost of the average house in Windsor, Essex, in the month of October 2023. I'm going to estimate, or I'm going to guess, that most teachers live in houses that are more money than this,
I would
more
think.
money than the average here, because I would surmise that teachers are certainly in not only in the highest 10% of income earners here in Windsor, Essex, but
Right.
probably even more so. So, John, if you had to estimate what a payment would be on this house, what would it look like?
Well, I think maybe a better number, right, is to not think about like buying this house outright right now, because if I'm a teacher, or if I've been making 100K, it's taken me 12 years to get to that spot, to reach the top of the category. So it's likely that, we bought a home, or you bought a home lower than that value, and your mortgage, your mortgage payment is probably lower at this point. Now, if I had to refinance, or if we needed to buy another home and we didn't have any equity, like we've built, only 20% equity, then we can talk about like what that calculation might look like. But what we did instead was that we looked up the average mortgage payment across Ontario, and I think we had some data from 2019, and it was like around $2,000, between $1,500 and $2,000 a month in mortgage payments. So that's like, that kind of takes into account that you may have bought your home 10 years ago, or 5 years ago, or even 1 year ago, or today. And that's where your kind of mortgage payment is coming from. So that might be a little bit more realistic to think about in terms of a person who's making 110, because realistically, if I bought a brand new home today, it's likely that I already had a home, especially if you're in your 40s to 50s and you're making 100K a year as a teacher, then you've got built up some equity in the home prior to like move or port over into the new home. So there's that. But again, if you put, let's say you put, I don't know, 20% down, and current rates are high, right, guys? Like current rates are anywhere between 5.8, 5.7 and 7, depending on your credit score. So an average rate right now, if you look at 6.5%, and you put 20% down on, say, that $530K home, and you had no more equity, like let's say you were a first-time home buyer, then you're looking at like $2,600 a month in mortgage payments. So that's going to eat up a good chunk of your value. Now, as I said, like that's the reality of people. Like, think about this, guys. Like, this is, if I'm not a 100K year earner and I'm a new teacher, and you're thinking about buying your first home, you're not even making 100K, and now your mortgage payment is $2,600.
It's insane.
Yeah.
So I gotta say, like that, if it's $60,000, and we're talking about a single income, so that's one thing. So maybe you have two incomes coming in, maybe you double that if that person also makes 100. But let's assume a single income for a second. That's $5,000 a month. If you were to come into the market for the first time right now, and you were at the top of the grid, and you're making that 100,000. You're giving up more than half of the money that you have coming into your bank account every month for that mortgage. And then you've got like $2,400. You might have a car payment or not, right? So let's call it, that's $1,600 left now. You talked about groceries, which were $400 a person or so. So now you're at $1,200. Like, this money is just disappearing very quickly. You're now down to $1,200, and we haven't talked about, say property taxes, say property insurance, say auto insurance, say life insurance, if you actually are, concerned about the uncertainties of life.
Eating out, phone bills.
Yeah. This, to me, it's like, I didn't realize how crazy inflation is crushing us, just in general in Canada. When you think that 100,000, we did this episode to really answer this question, and I don't think we're answering it as we go, but I'm like starting to recognize that this is crazy when you think about that. And I feel blessed that I guess we got into the housing market when we did, because it's definitely going to pose a challenge for some other people out there. So I wonder, what could we suggest for those who are listening who may not have a residence yet? They're looking to invest. They want to get into the real estate market. Like, what are some things we can do? Like, not go to Starbucks is one of them, but I don't think that's going to cut it. And I know Matt's not a big fan of it. What do you think, Matt? Like, what can people do?
Matt's a big fan of Starbucks, not cutting it out.
Yeah.
Well, and I think this is the silver lining. This is the great message. And the three of us are living proof of this, right? It's like, we have, you either have to spend less, and that's definitely no fun and pretty hard to do, because of course, one of the benefits of so many of these jobs is you get, some significant time off. And so time off with no money to travel, that reminds me of like having a poor retirement. It sounds awful. So you either have to spend less, which to me is no fun, or you have to make more. And that's what this podcast is all about. How can you make more? How can you create more income opportunities? How can you generate more money? How can you create some assurances that as you age and as you progress and as you get to the point where you want to wind down your working career, you will have enough money to enjoy the time that you'll then have. And as part of my own personal beliefs, how can I leave something behind as a legacy for my children so that when inflation continues to take its toll in the future, my kids will have a leg up on everyone else. And that's where the messages of so many of our episodes about how to go about investing and how to get started are critical. And just think about the number of people we talk to who have been stuck, who have been spinning their wheels on investing, and inflation has continued to eat away and eat away and eat away at the income they do have. The cost now to invest have been going up and up and up. So I think, my big message here is to get started. This to think the topic of this is mind blowing, that 100 grand is perhaps not enough for you to live comfortably almost anywhere in this country is pretty mind blowing. And I think a call to all of you out there who have aspired to take action and start investing, to actually take that action, to reach out to us for a consultation, for a call. We can get into the minutia with you and really analyze your situation. We've got, Kyle is brilliant at this. We can start to talk to you about some of our back episodes topics. We can really help you understand which one of these strategies might relate to you. Is it real estate investing? We certainly do a lot of that. We're going to talk in future episodes about some terrific opportunities we've just recently found in real estate investing. Is that the way you want to go? Do you want to be hands off and just be a money partner, a joint venture partner in a future property? We've got options for that as well. I'm like, I can feel my temperature rising as we talk about this. This is like a crisis. If 100 grand isn't enough to live comfortably in this country, I won't complain about systemic issues or things we can't control, because I'm a firm believer in your destiny is in your hands. So forget complaining about the government or this or that or the other thing. Let's focus on what you can do for yourself.
Yeah. Good message there, Matt, and good takeaway. And I think my takeaway, from analyzing the data is thinking about some of the, like you said, messages we've shared in prior podcasts, and which is about kind of aligning your priorities. I think we talked about a lot of averages here, like when we did our average, what's our average mortgage payment? What's our average car payment? What's our average for groceries? What's our average for going out to eat? Like that kind of thing. For me, I think if you're going to, say make it and change your comfort level so that 100K is enough. And if you're going to just say, I'm not going to make more money, but I'm going to restructure the money I have to create cushion so that I can invest, that's still doable, because that's what I did for a long time. I had no extra money coming in, but I did a lot of restructuring on what matters to me. And I think that's a good question we have to ask ourselves. What really matters to you, and then how do you structure? So like what you said, Matt, is important too. Is like hop on a call with us too, because we've done a lot of restructuring calls to think about like what should we focus on? How can I restructure this? Like we did an episode a couple episodes ago, Cal, about where we, should we be putting money here, or maybe we should be actually, doing some money on, putting some money away for our financial security first, because that will also allow us to have some capital money we can move to other places, and we actually can use the same dollar twice. And so we've got some strategies we've used with people to help restructure their current, their current financial situation to allow them to get into real estate investing or use their money for future wealth building. So let us know about that. I think that's my big takeaway.
I love it. I love it. I got a surge of energy from Matt there. He was getting passionate, and I love it. What I'm hearing in both of what you're saying is, again, like I loved what I heard from Matt about this idea that you are essentially in control of your destiny. And that is 100% true. And John, you're giving some ideas around how you can actually take control of your destiny. And I think I just want to sort of put a exclamation point behind those two ideas. Like if you don't know why you want to invest, or you don't know why you want to grow some wealth or whatever it is, the reality is you're not going to do it because you're not clear enough on the why. You're not clear on what it is that you're trying to achieve. The reality is, and I say this to people who do call in, and I there was one time where I said to someone, I said, it sounds like you're living your best life right now with your current budget, and it's working for you. You don't have anything left to invest, but it sounds like you're doing exactly what you want to do. We always use the example of the softball, playing softball 4 days a week. If that's you, rock and roll. But if you're not happy with where you're at now, you got to prioritize. You got to think about what is it that you actually want. And then actually when people say planning, like it sounds scary, but the reality is like, if I keep doing what I'm doing now, and then I fast forward for 10, 20, 30 years, what is that going to do for me? And if you're playing a game where it means you're going to be at exactly the same level and you just, hopefully will continue earning the same amount of income, but you've not gained any sort of assets or wealth, that's fine. But as long as you're aware that that's what you're doing, right? If you want that to change, you need to look at that and you need to actually extrapolate out and say, if I keep doing this, here's where I'm going to be. Like it's not going to change on your own. You need to be well aware of it. And if you're okay with the end goal or the result of it, then you're in good shape. If you're not okay with that end goal, then you need to look and you need to decide what actually brings me happiness and joy in my life now and what does not. For a lot of people, I pick on cars all the time. Cars, that $800 on average per month for a car payment is a lot of money, right? So it's like, does it actually bring you the amount of joy that you really thought it would bring you? It's okay if you're wrong. You can sell it and you can downsize, or you can sell your home and you can downsize that. Whatever you need to do what you need to do and get yourself going on your plan, not on our plan, on your plan. And you can reach out to us anytime so we can help you sort of come to some realization as to what your next steps are.